Many businesses assume that lead generation is the hard part. They focus on visibility, traffic, content, reach, and acquisition. And once a person shows interest, fills out a form, books a call, replies to a message, or asks for information, they treat the opportunity as if it already has momentum. But interest is not momentum. Interest is only possibility. This is where a large amount of revenue is quietly lost. Not before attention is earned, but after it. The lead exists. The signal is real. The opportunity is present. And still, nothing happens with enough consistency to move it forward. Response is delayed. Context is incomplete. Ownership is unclear. The next action is missing. From the outside, this does not always look like a serious problem. No obvious collapse happens. No single dramatic mistake appears. The business continues operating. Messages still get sent. Calls still happen. Some deals still close. But underneath, a pattern is forming. Opportunities are cooling down faster than the business can follow them. Potential customers are entering the system, but they are not being handled with enough structure to keep their attention alive. This is one of the most common operational blind spots in small businesses. They assume lost revenue begins with poor marketing, when in reality it often begins with weak follow-up. The problem is not always lack of demand. Sometimes the problem is what happens after demand responds. Once interest appears, speed matters, clarity matters, continuity matters. If those things are missing, the opportunity begins to decay immediately. A lead does not stay warm because the business wants it to. It stays warm only when the process around it is strong enough to hold momentum. That process is rarely treated with enough seriousness. Many businesses rely on memory. Someone plans to reply later. Someone assumes another person is handling it. Someone believes the next step is obvious. Someone expects the lead to wait. But leads do not wait inside the business's internal confusion. They continue comparing, thinking, getting distracted, or moving toward someone else who responds with more structure. That is why follow-up should not be seen as an administrative detail. It is part of delivery. It is part of conversion. It is part of growth. The moment a business earns attention, it also earns a responsibility. Not just to reply, but to move the opportunity forward with discipline. Without that discipline, lead generation becomes wasteful. More attention enters the system, but too much of it leaks out before a decision is made. And when that leakage is not measured clearly, the business usually misdiagnoses the problem. It believes more leads are needed, when in many cases better handling would have created more revenue from the leads already there. That is why lead management is not a sales detail. It is an operational system. And when that system is weak, growth becomes harder than it needs to be. What makes this problem difficult is that lost leads rarely look like failure in real time. They look like delay. A reply that comes tomorrow instead of today. A note that was never added. A follow-up that someone intended to send, but did not. A conversation that happened in one place, without being visible in another. Each of these moments appears small, but growth is often damaged by small breaks in continuity, not by large visible errors. A lead does not disappear only because of rejection. Very often, it disappears because momentum weakens. The business assumes interest is still there. The lead assumes the business is not fully engaged. Neither side states this directly. The opportunity simply cools. This is why follow-up cannot depend on good intentions. It cannot depend on memory. It cannot depend on whoever feels available. It cannot depend on scattered messages, private context, or assumptions about who is responsible. Once a lead enters the business, 4 things need to become immediately clear. Who owns the next step? What the next step is? When it must happen? And where the relevant context lives. If any of these are missing, the lead is already at risk. Ownership matters because unowned leads decay quickly. When responsibility is vague, everyone assumes movement is happening somewhere else. Activity appears to exist, but no one is actually advancing the opportunity. The next step matters because interest does not convert through general attention. It converts through directed movement. Something specific has to happen. A reply, a qualification, a scheduled call, a proposal, a confirmation, a follow-up message with purpose. Without a defined next step, the lead remains present, but inactive. Timing matters because delay changes perception. A late response is not only slower, it often signals disorganization, low priority, or weak internal control. Even when that is not true, it is often what the lead experiences. And experience shapes decisions. Context matters because every break in information reduces quality. When the person responding does not know what happened before, what was promised, what was asked, or what the lead cared about, continuity breaks again. The lead has to repeat themselves. The business looks fragmented. Trust weakens. This is why lead loss is rarely just a sales problem. It is usually a coordination problem. The opportunity exists, but the handoff is weak. The interest is real, but the process around it is inconsistent. And inconsistency is expensive because it wastes attention that has already been earned. That is one of the most important distinctions in growth. Generating interest costs time, money, energy, and attention. Losing that interest through weak handling is not just unfortunate, it is operational waste. And businesses that do not see this clearly often keep investing upstream while leaking value downstream. They ask how to generate more interest before learning how to protect the interest they already created. The reason many businesses fail at follow-up is that they treat lead handling as a communication task instead of an operational process. Communication matters, but communication alone is not structure. A fast reply without a clear next step does not solve the problem. A polite message without ownership does not solve the problem. A conversation without a visible status does not solve the problem. The business may feel responsive, but responsiveness is not the same as control. Control begins when a lead can move through the process without depending on memory, individual interpretation, or repeated clarification. This is where lead management becomes measurable. A business should be able to answer simple questions without hesitation. How many active leads exist right now? Which stage each one is in? Who owns the next action? How long each lead has been waiting? What condition must be met before the opportunity moves forward? These questions are not administrative. They determine whether revenue is being protected or left to chance. When these answers are unclear, lead handling becomes emotional. Teams act on urgency, not on structure. They respond to the loudest message, the newest request, the most visible opportunity. But visible does not always mean valuable, and urgent does not always mean important. Without a clear system, attention is constantly pulled away from the leads that need disciplined follow-up. This creates another hidden problem. The business starts confusing activity with progression. Messages are being sent, conversations are happening, calls are being booked, reminders are being exchanged. So it feels like movement exists, but movement is not the same as advancement. A lead advances only when the process reduces uncertainty. The lead knows what happens next. The business knows what happens next. The timing is clear. The responsibility is clear. Anything less than that creates drag. And drag matters because follow-up is not linear. A lead that is not moved forward clearly does not remain in the same condition. It becomes colder, less certain, less attentive, less likely to respond. In other words, time is not neutral. Time either strengthens momentum or weakens it. That is why good lead handling is not based on reacting well. It is based on reducing ambiguity early. The less ambiguity exists, the less energy the business spends trying to recover context later. This is also why strong follow-up systems create more than conversion efficiency. They create trust. A business that follows up well looks more credible, more coordinated, and easier to buy from. Not because it is more persuasive, but because it feels more stable. And stability matters in decision-making. People move forward more easily when the process around them feels reliable. That is why businesses do not lose leads only through poor messaging. They lose them through weak structure. The interest was already earned. The opportunity was already present. What failed was the system responsible for turning that attention into progress.